one of the things that speaks to my reality is the political context. And this is something that the Reporters Without Borders themselves had articulated in explaining some of the reasons why they ranked us at 60 in the world. They talk about the fact that to protect their jobs, and they're talking about journalists, their security, the journalist security in Ghana, they increasingly resort to self-censorship. And it is that phrase, that self-censorship issue, that for me speaks to a current reality. Now, many people won't know, but in many newsrooms, including our own, colleagues do stories that are very critical, and people say I'm diabolical. I am, something you've produced me a top story. For us, if it has to be controversial, that's the thing that you do. You don't care whose ox is God. You go out there, top story every day, and you do your stuff. If it's the president, you say it as it is. You want to be as controversial and tell the story in a way that people will pay attention to. But that's journalism for you. So far as you're factual, you are okay to do the story. But in newsrooms now, you're doing a story come and you're simply passionate about it, you're going to do a story. The comments that you hear colleagues pass, and sometimes it's not in jest, but if you drill down, it's actually coming from a place. They tell you, Charlie, they'll come for you, right? And in many newsrooms now, you see people say this on a daily basis, on a regular basis to you. We are self-censoring. And I've done this job for 18 years, so I know what I'm saying. We are self-censoring more now than we used to be. You are thinking a bit more. When you're writing a headline, you are thinking a bit more about the implication of this headline than you would do before. And for me, that is one of those silent areas we haven't talked about enough. I know Manasseh has talked a lot about the physical attributes of the fear of harm. And so I will not belabor that point. But for me, that point that the Reporters Without Borders touched on, it is so critical to the reality today. There must be a reason for this. And one of the reasons for this is, and I have disagreed with the president quite forcefully, when his public utterances, unfortunately, reinforces this view and leads journalists like myself and others to self-censor a bit more. Look, you might eventually overcome the self-censorship after you've looked at the headline in 1,000 ways, which you shouldn't really, because it's factual. That's, for me, that fundamentally is all you should look at. Is this factual? If it's factual, write it. But when you pause for a longer time, you consult colleagues, sometimes it has to go all the way up just to check whether what you're writing, the implications of it, there might be something wrong there. But back to the point. Sometimes the president's own utterances publicly lead to this, extreme self-censorship that we do. And I'll give you an example. Very recently last year, JoyNews decided to do have a series of conversations about the free senior high school policy. And that's what journalists do. What we do is we need to hold government's feet to the fire. We need to hold government accountable to the people. In fact, it is a constitutional injunction in chapter 12 of the Constitution.
Yeah. We should be playing you that sound clip from the president, but make the point where he speaks about the free SHS and what he thinks it is the thing that you are doing at multimedia.
Absolutely. And then the president gets an opportunity, and then the president is a well-known, renowned lawyer. He knows that we have a legal constitutional injunction to hold his government accountable to the people, right? If you've implemented a very fantastic policy as to the free SHS, you're spending possibly, well, not even possibly, the facts from the budget shows it. One of the biggest line items in the budget in terms of government intervention policy is the free SHS. If you do that, you spend the taxpayers' resources to implement such a fantastic, wide-ranging, very important, and my brother benefits from this, and we applaud the government for this. If you do that, though, you will need the citizens to sort of evaluate what you're doing. And the journalists must do that, because every Ghanaian can do that, right? And so we must do that. We must give you the feedback. And we give microphones to people to do just that, a constitutional injunction. And then the president gets an opportunity to speak about this work and the journalist was doing. And this is what he says, quote, "A radio station is currently running a campaign against free SHS. During the last election, I got the clear impression free SHS had been endorsed by all political parties, and all we need to do was to keep improving it. Would a spirited defense of the free SHS policy constitute an attack on press freedom? I wonder." Now, it is the first line for me that is a problem, where the president characterizes a piece of journalistic work that in essence only gives the microphone to the people to give the government feedback on a very important national policy like the free SHS. To characterize that as running a campaign against the policy, it is unfortunate to say the least. But what it does to the journalist who's doing this work comes back to the self-censorship issue that the Reporters Without Borders highlights as part of the reason why we are scoring this low. A journalist hears that from the president. So that is how your president characterizes your work when you're not even being critical. You're simply opening the phone lines and asking people experiencing the free SHS in real time to give feedback to him and his policy implementers. And he says that is a campaign against it. That is unfortunate. And that feeds into the self-censorship issue. And for me, that has been one of the key things that we're experiencing in newsrooms now in terms of reality. There's a fear there that somebody, the president, may mischaracterize what you're doing as one, a campaign, as two, a politically motivated agenda against this government. And that often influences not what necessarily he does, but what others, as Kukubaku will always call them, the fringe elements, right, around his government and people who think they hold allegiance to him and are loyal to him, they then begin to take a cue from what the president had said, and then they then begin to do the attacks. And so you hear people like the Japan go on the radio and attack journalists because the signal from above is what they're doing could possibly be a campaign against us.
Right.
That for me is unfortunate.